This video is part of a new series where I'll go over the things I'm working on, like game dev stuff, and I'll explain how things work and show you the progress I've made along the way. So first of all, you'll notice that there's some stuff playing in the background of this video. For these videos, I'll probably be using footage from my games for most of the backgrounds. Since you'll probably be looking at the background a lot, especially compared to my normal coding videos, I thought it was appropriate to just show my games in the background, and also since that's what I'm working on in a sense. Although since this is the first video, I'm going to be using some footage from some of my older games. For this video, the footage is from Drawn Down Abyss, which is about a year old. So in general, being able to squeeze in game dev has been a bit tricky for me because at the beginning of March I got a full-time job, and then since October of last year I've been working on a game development project part-time for someone else. And then I'm also working on a competitive service for Beat Saber, which Beat Saber is another thing that takes up a lot of my time in general because I spend a lot of time playing it. And also finally, I spend a lot of time working on videos for this YouTube channel. It's actually only a couple hours every weekend pretty much, but it still takes up a decent amount of my time, especially when I'm busy pretty much all week with my full-time job. So the current project that I'm working on right now is really one project with two separate goals, and there's kind of two separate sections to it. So I'm making a framework and basically a prototype to test out my abilities in environmental game development, kind of. I'm trying to make environments look as nice as possible and just kind of feel immersive, even though it's 2D and pixel art. And the other goal is to basically make a framework that I can reuse for my other games. It's really one project though, because I'm making a framework right now for this prototype, but it needs to be adaptable to other games I make in the future. So in this video, I'm mostly covering the progress I have made on that framework. If you see my Twitter, you'd know that the first thing I've worked on was my text rendering system, which I started back in the beginning of April pretty much. A lot of people have been asking about how I do my text and stuff, because when you use a normal text system and you try to render it at a pixel art scale, it gets all garbled up or whatever, and it looks weird. So what I've done is I've made my own system where it just works off of a bunch of images. It has an order of characters, and based on the order of characters, it knows what character images where in the image I'm loading my fonts from. And then when you pass the font class, basically, a string of text, it can generate a string of character images based on the character order and the font image I gave it. In this particular font system, I can load my fonts from images and it'll auto detect the orders of the character images based on these bars I add to the image it's loading. It's also got a couple other useful features like telling how wide some text would be so that I can use that value to center text and stuff like that. But overall, it's a pretty simple system. The next thing I've worked on was my sprite sheet generator and my sprite sheet loader. So the sprite sheet generator can take an image, and I can click on things basically and generate a sprite sheet from it. The use of this is just that I can take some image I've been sketching all over and just drawing things in random places and then organize it in a way that can be easily read by my sprite sheet loader. The sprite sheet generator breaks things up into rows and columns. If I press R, it goes to a new row. And generally my sprite sheet system, if it's a tile set, everything on the x-axis is a variant of the thing on the y-axis. So you go down in rows, and every row is basically a single type of tile, and then all the variants are along that x-axis. And I use different pixels to indicate different sections for the sprite sheet loader. Like I use magenta to mark the beginning corner of an image, and then I use cyan dots to mark the ending corners of an image. And for the sprite sheet loader, that just comes down to scanning for, well, first of all, the yellow pixels to tell where the row starts, although in the end, you don't actually need those. I could have done it without them. I don't know why I didn't. But it scans for the yellow pixels, and then it looks to the right of those yellow pixels for magenta pixels, and then for every magenta pixel, it looks to the right and below until it finds the cyan pixels so that it knows where the image ends. And then using those coordinates of the magenta and the cyan pixels, it can clip out the image from the sprite sheet, and then I can save it. In the structure for my sprite sheets is basically just a dictionary with each sprite sheet as a value, as a key in the dictionary, and then each of the sections of that dictionary contains another dictionary where each of the keys is the coordinates of the tile on that sprite sheet. So that's a little bit confusing, but yeah, that's how I do it. It makes the images easily accessible without iteration, really. Another thing I've been working on is my chunk system, and this is the biggest thing, and it's something that I've wasted a lot of time writing over and over again for different projects. The reason why I wrote it over and over again without making a framework for it is because it's a little bit quicker to write a tile system that's specific to the needs of one project than to make a tile system that works for all of my projects. So I don't know if you guys have seen my video I did on optimization, but in there I covered a chunk system basically. So my chunk system I wrote for this framework is not just a chunk system, it's an overall tile system, but it's mainly broken down into chunks. I covered this in my optimization video, but basically chunks are like they are in Minecraft. You can split up different sections of tiles into different categories so you can access them quicker if you know where they are. The way you can access them quicker is you store all of those chunks in a dictionary behind keys of their coordinates, like for that chunk. And then you can just access those coordinates for the chunk in that dictionary to get all of the tiles that are in that chunk. So that way you break down your tiles into a more easily accessible format, so you don't have to iterate through all of your tiles every single time you want to render. My chunk system I wrote also incorporates layers into that. So it goes chunks, and then each chunk has a few layers in it, and then inside those layers are the list of tiles for that chunk. And then I also have off-grid tiles, which do not fit the chunk system, so they're loaded a bit differently in more of an iterative fashion. My chunk system has a few basic functions like adding tiles, getting tiles, deleting tiles, and it has to be able to do that for both the off-grid and grid systems. The grid systems is going into the chunk system. The off-grid stuff is just kind of in its own system. It's under my chunk system library, kind of, but it's not technically using chunks, because this is more of a tile system than anything else. One of the most important features I've got in this library is the getVisible function, which I can use to just call and get all of the visible grid tiles and off-grid tiles based on the screen size and the location of the screen in the game's world. Typically I call that the scroll value. This whole tile system is the class, so that when I want to make a map, I can just store it as an object, and it has all these functions built in. So I just do like level map equals chunk system, and then I pass it the parameters for that chunk system, like the chunk size, the tile size, and then the display size. And then I can load the map from a JSON file, which I store all of my data in JSON files, because you can just dump things that are dictionaries and lists in Python into JSON. It translates very nicely using the JSON library, and then you can load it back in. As long as you don't have any objects in there and it's just lists and dictionaries, you can just pass it straight in, which is what I do for my chunk system. So I just store everything in lists and dictionaries, and I don't have to really think about it much. After I've loaded my map into the chunk system object that I've made, I can just do all the normal operations on it, like get the visible tiles and add tiles, delete tiles, and stuff like that. This object in general is very convenient. It allows me to easily access a bunch of very powerful features for the system, and it simplifies what I have to do for it, so that I'm really not writing too much code when I'm using this library or framework or whatever. And it just does everything behind the scenes, kind of, and just gives me a huge performance boost when dealing with large amounts of tiles. Some people may be confused about how I'm doing layers, because for some people that's a confusing subject. Basically how it works is I've got a list of layers, and then I can sort those layers by their layer number, basically, to get the order things need to be rendered in, because when you render something and you render something after that, the thing rendered second appears on top, so you can basically build layers out of that. So you just render the layers in the back first and the layers in the front last. When I request from my chunk system the visible tiles, it gives it back in a form where it's all separated by the layers, so I can still render those tiles in the correct order. So there's just a little bit work on my end in terms of stuff I have to do outside of this tile system when I make a game because I have to set it up to render those things properly. I don't want to build the rendering into this framework because that just kind of feels restrictive. I don't really want to do anything that's going to be super specific to anything because there's all sorts of ways that can end up rendering things. So I don't want to lock myself down to any of those ways. And if I do try to, I'll probably just end up writing a different system for the next game I make. Anyways, that's pretty much it for the chunk system I wrote, or the tile system I wrote. The next thing I worked on was my level editor, which is basically just an interface for this chunk system, because my chunk system already has the ability to load from files and save to files, which are in JSON. So my level editor just has to be able to call the add tile and delete tile functions and have some other useful features. In terms of those useful features, some of my ideas were just things like flood fill, in general, an interface for layers that looks nice so I can work with that well, and auto tiling, where it automatically determines what tiles are used based on the shape of the terrain. So when you have a tile set, you have some tiles that you want to appear if it's being bordered by tiles on certain sides. And I can specify that in a JSON file that's like the config for my level editor, and based on that it knows which tile to use from a tile set that I've got selected. And all of that's done by just selecting the tiles I want to modify and then pressing Ctrl T, and then it just auto tiles the whole thing. In terms of the layering features I wanted, it's pretty simple. I just set it up so that I have an option where all of the layers that are not the ones I'm on are shown at a semi-transparent level, and then the one I'm on is fully opaque. That allows me to see what I'm working on and just kind of the layering overall. The level editor also has some basic UI features for selecting tiles and tile sets, but that's just kind of expected. So really in the end, this level editor is not too complicated. It basically just calls the functions from my tile system to add things and remove things and save things and load things. There's some special stuff I did here though. When I was making Super Potato Bra, I had to make, I think, 60 something levels. I don't know how many it was. It was a lot, and it was very time consuming, and I got very tired of it, and it felt like I was doing something I didn't want to do, but I knew I needed to get it done so I could finish that game. And the reward of finishing that game was worth it, but overall it was a very boring process to make so many levels. Level design is definitely my least favorite part of game development, so I decided to throw in some stuff to make it a little bit more entertaining. So the first thing I threw in was some particle effects when I remove things. So it would take the image of the tile I remove, just kind of break that down into its colors at certain locations, and then just create particles out of those colors. In which, by the way, you can get the color at a specific location on an image in Pygame with surface.getAt, I believe. The other special effect I added to make level editing more entertaining is that when I place a tile, it's got a white effect shooting out, and it's just kind of like a square effect, and it's very nice, especially when I draw on a line or something. And funny enough, it was supposed to be just a rectangle going out that just disappeared after the width of the rectangle gets thin enough, but I forgot about the fact that when drawing rects in Pygame and you specify a width, if you specify a width of 0, that's set to fill in the whole shape instead of having a width of 0. So when I set up my system that just kind of shrunk the width of that rectangle over time, or the borders of the rectangle, it would get down to 0, and then it would briefly flood fill basically that rect before my visual effects system would delete it. So it had this flash at the end, which that ended up being a bug turned feature for me. I thought it looked cool, so I kept it. So that's pretty much it for the level editor. In terms of my framework, there was a bunch of miscellaneous useful functions I threw into a core functions script. This included things like just functions for reading files, writing to files, swapping out palettes in images, so like swapping out a specific color in an image for another color. I've got a function for clipping out a subsurface from a surface. I've got functions for just defining rects from specific points, and sorting points to make a rect-friendly assortment of points. It's complicated, but it's useful for selection and stuff like that in my level editor. So maybe you have the top right point and the bottom left point, and I've got a function to convert that into top left and bottom right, basically. And I've also got a function in here for generating a list of points between 2 points in a two-dimensional space if it's assumed that it's a rectangle. that you're looking for points inside of. So basically getting a list of all the points in a rectangle. That's useful for my selection tool in my level editor. So if I can select and delete, because it'll generate the list of points in that rectangle, and I just adjust those points, well, the parameters for generating those points based on the scale of the tile system. That's pretty much it for the new stuff I've done with this library. Or framework. I basically put my old framework into this framework though. My old framework was pretty much just an entity system with like things like an action system with animations. There's a particle system in there, and then there was physics for the entities. And I just overhauled some sections of that to make it work a bit better so that I could use it with a little bit less code. But for the most part, I kept it the same, and I just threw that into this current framework I'm working on. So that actually saved me a lot of time in a sense, but that code was not written to the standard I would prefer. So it's a bit messy in there, and there's all sorts of different variable naming standards and stuff like that in there. Anyways, that's pretty much it for the framework I was using. Many people have already asked me if I'll be releasing this framework, and I will, but I would recommend against using it because you're going to need to understand it to use it, and you're probably going to need to make changes to some of the framework's code if you want to do anything advanced, and you can't make those changes unless you really understand the framework itself. So if you're going to get to that point where you understand the framework well enough to use it effectively, I would say just make your own, because you'll understand the stuff you make best, and it doesn't take too long. In general, it's also a great learning experience to just write all of the stuff for yourself. So now on to the stuff I was doing for the prototype game. That's the main focus of what I'm working on here. I'm not going to cover too much in this video. I'm actually way ahead of what I'm covering in this video as of the time of this recording. But the first thing I did was I just started drawing the tile set. I don't know if this is normal, but that's generally what I start doing first. I'll draw the basic terrain tile set, which consists of like grass and stuff. And I actually did this section on stream, and in the time of 2.5 hours or something, I drew all of this. And then after that stream, I streamed again the next day, and then came back and did a few more tiles. And during the second stream, I started working on the actual code for the prototype, which I'll show in the next devlog. Anyways, a lot of people asked me about how long it takes me to do stuff I work on, and I added it up for like all the framework and the early work I did on my prototype game, and all the stuff I've covered in this video was about 20 hours, I think. Once you have a lot of experience, you can generally get this stuff done pretty quickly, which is very nice. Anyways, that's pretty much it for this devlog. I hope I'll see you guys in the next video.